2 Samuel, chapter 13. David had a beautiful daughter named Tamar, who was the sister of Absalom. She was also the half-sister of Amnon, who fell in love with her. But Tamar was a virgin, and Amnon could not think of a way to be alone with her. He was so upset about it that he made himself sick. Amnon had a friend named Jonadab, who was the son of David's brother Shimeah. Jonadab always knew how to get what he wanted, and he said to Amnon,
"What's the matter? You're the king's son. You shouldn't have to go around feeling sorry for yourself every morning."
Amnon said,
"I'm in love with Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister."
Jonadab told him,
"Lie down on your bed and pretend to be sick. When your father comes to see you, ask him to send Tamar so you can watch her cook something for you. Then she can serve you the food."
So Amnon went to bed and pretended to be sick. When the king came to see him, Amnon said,
"Please, ask Tamar to come over. She can make some special bread while I watch, and then she can serve me the bread."
David told Tamar,
"Go over to Amnon's house and fix him some food."
When she got there, he was lying in bed. She mixed the dough, made the loaves, and baked them while he watched. Then she took the bread out of the pan and put it on his plate, but he refused to eat it. Amnon said,
"Send the servants out of the house."
After they had gone, he said to Tamar,
"Serve the food in my bedroom."
Tamar picked up the bread that she had made and brought it into Amnon's bedroom. But as she was taking it over to him, he grabbed her and said,
"Come to bed with me."
She answered,
"No, please don't force me. This sort of thing isn't done in Israel. It's too disgusting. Think of me. I'll be disgraced forever. And think of yourself. Everyone in Israel will say you're nothing but trash. Just ask the king, and he will let you marry me."
But Amnon would not listen to what she said. He was stronger than she was, so he overpowered her and raped her. Then Amnon hated her even more than he had loved her before. So he told her,
"Get up and get out."
She said,
"Don't send me away. That would be worse than what you've already done."
But Amnon would not listen. He called in his servant and said,
"Throw this woman out and lock the door."
The servant made her leave, and he locked the door behind her. The king's unmarried daughters used to wear long robes with sleeves. Tamar tore the robe she was wearing and put ashes on her head. Then she covered her face with her hands and cried loudly as she walked away. Tamar's brother Absalom said to her,
"How could Amnon have done such a terrible thing to you? But since he's your brother, don't tell anyone what happened. Just try not to think about it."
Tamar soon moved into Absalom's house, but she was always sad and lonely. When David heard what had happened to Tamar, he was very angry. But Amnon was his oldest son and also his favorite, and David would not do anything to make Amnon unhappy. Absalom treated Amnon as though nothing had happened. But he hated Amnon for what he had done to his sister Tamar. 2 years later, Absalom's servants were cutting wool from his sheep in Baal Hazor near the town of Ephraim, and Absalom invited all of the king's sons to be there. Then he went to David and said,
"My servants are cutting the wool from my sheep. Please come and join us."
David answered,
"No, my son, we won't go. It would be too expensive for you."
Absalom tried to get him to change his mind, but David did not want to go. He only said that he hoped they would have a good time. Absalom said,
"If you won't go, at least let my brother Amnon come with us."
David asked,
"Why should he go with you?"
But Absalom kept on insisting, and finally David let Amnon and all his other sons go with Absalom. Absalom prepared a banquet fit for a king, but he told his servants,
"Keep an eye on Amnon. When he gets a little drunk from the wine and is feeling good, I'll give the signal, then kill him. I've commanded you to do it, so don't be afraid. Be strong and brave."
Absalom's servants killed Amnon, just as Absalom had told them. The rest of the king's sons quickly rode away on their mules to escape from Absalom. While they were on their way to Jerusalem, someone told David,
Absalom has killed all of your sons. Not even one is left.
David got up, and in his sorrow he tore his clothes and lay down on the ground. His servants remained standing, but they tore their clothes too. Then David's nephew Jonadab said,
Your Majesty, not all of your sons were killed. Only Amnon is dead. On the day that Amnon raped Tamar, Absalom decided to kill him. Don't worry about the report that all your sons were killed. Only Amnon is dead, and Absalom has run away.
One of the guards noticed a lot of people coming along the hillside on the road to Horonaim. He went and told the king.
I saw some men coming along Horonaim Road.
Jonadab said,
Your Majesty, look! Here come your sons now, just as I told you.
No sooner had he said it than David's sons came in. They were weeping out loud, and David and all his officials cried just as loudly. David was sad for a long time because Amnon was dead. Absalom had run away to Geshur, where he stayed for 3 years with King Talmai, the son of Ammihud. David still felt so sad over the loss of Amnon that he wanted to take his army there and capture Absalom. 2 Samuel chapter 14. Joab knew that David couldn't stop thinking about Absalom, and he sent someone to bring in the wise woman who lived in Tekoa. Joab told her,
Put on funeral clothes, and don't use any makeup. Go to the king and pretend you have spent a long time mourning the death of a loved one.
Then he told her what to say. The woman from Tekoa went to David. She bowed very low and said,
Your Majesty, please help me.
David asked,
What's the matter?
She replied,
My husband is dead, and I'm a widow. I had 2 sons, but they got into a fight out in the field where there was no one to pull them apart, and one of them killed the other. Now all of my relatives have come to me and said, Hand over your son. We're going to put him to death for killing his brother. But what they really want is to get rid of him so they can take over our land. Please don't let them put out my only flame of hope. There won't be anyone left on this earth to carry on my husband's name.
Go on home.
David told her.
I'll take care of this matter for you.
The woman said,
I hope your decision doesn't cause any problems for you. But if it does, you can blame me.
He said,
If anyone gives you any trouble, bring them to me, and it won't happen again.
Please,
she replied,
swear by the Lord your God that no one will be allowed to kill my son.
He said,
I swear by the living Lord that no one will touch even a hair on his head.
Then she asked,
Your Majesty, may I say something?
Yes?
He answered. The woman said,
Haven't you been hurting God's people? Your own son had to leave the country, and when you judged in my favor, it was the same as admitting that you should have let him come back. We each must die and disappear like water poured out on the ground. But God doesn't take our lives. Instead, he figures out ways of bringing us back when we run away. Your Majesty, I came here to tell you about my problem because I was afraid of what someone might do to me. I decided to come to you because I thought you could help. In fact, I knew that you would listen and save my son and me from those who want to take the land that God gave us. I can rest easy now that you have given your decision. You know the difference between right and wrong just like an angel of God. And I pray that the Lord your God will be with you.
Then David said to the woman,
Now I'm going to ask you a question, and don't try to hide the truth.
The woman replied,
Please go ahead, Your Majesty.
David asked,
Did Joab put you up to this?
The woman answered,
Your Majesty, I swear by your life that no one can hide the truth from you. Yes, Joab did tell me what to say, but only to show you the other side of this problem. You must be as wise as the angel of God to know everything that goes on in this country.
David turned to Joab and said,
It seems that I have already given my decision. Go, and bring Absalom back.
Joab bowed very low and said,
Your Majesty, I thank you for giving your permission. It shows that you approve of me.
Joab went to Geshur to get Absalom. But when they came back to Jerusalem, David told Joab,
I don't want to see my son Absalom. Tell him to stay away from me.
So Absalom went to his own house without seeing his father. No one in all Israel was as handsome and well-built as Absalom. He got his hair cut once a year, and when the hair was weighed, it came to about 5 pounds. Absalom had 3 sons. He also had a daughter named Tamar, who grew up to be very beautiful. Absalom lived in Jerusalem for 2 years without seeing his father. He wanted Joab to talk to David for him. So one day he sent a message asking Joab to come over, but Joab refused. Absalom sent another message, but Joab still refused. Finally, Absalom told his servants,
Joab's barley field is right next to mine. Go set it on fire.
And they did. Joab went to Absalom's house and demanded,
Why did your servant set my field on fire?
Absalom answered,
You didn't pay any attention when I sent for you. I want you to ask my father why he told me to come back from Geshur. I was better off there. I want to see my father now. If I'm guilty, let him kill me.
Joab went to David and told him what Absalom had said. David sent for Absalom, and Absalom came. He bowed very low, and David leaned over and kissed him. 2 Samuel, chapter 15. Sometime later, Absalom got himself a chariot with horses to pull it, and he had 50 men run in front. He would get up early each morning and wait by the side of the road that led to the city gate. Anyone who had a complaint to bring to King David would have to go that way, and Absalom would ask each of them,
Where are you from?
If they said,
I'm from a tribe in the north.
Absalom would say,
You deserve to win your case. It's too bad the king doesn't have anyone to hear complaints like yours. I wish someone would make me the judge around here. I would be fair to everyone.
Whenever anyone would come to Absalom and start bowing down, he would reach out and hug and kiss them. That's how he treated everyone from Israel who brought a complaint to the king. Soon everyone in Israel liked Absalom better than they liked David. 4 years later, Absalom said to David,
Please, let me go to Hebron. I have to keep a promise that I made to the Lord when I was living with the Arameans in Geshur. I promised that if the Lord would bring me back to live in Jerusalem, I would worship him in Hebron.
David gave his permission, and Absalom went to Hebron. He took 200 men from Jerusalem with him, but they had no idea what he was going to do. Absalom offered sacrifices in Hebron and sent someone to Gilo to tell David's advisor Ahithophel to come. More and more people were joining Absalom and supporting his plot. Meanwhile, Absalom had secretly sent some messengers to the northern tribes of Israel. The messengers told everyone,
When you hear the sound of the trumpets, you must shout, Absalom now rules as king in Hebron.
A messenger came and told David,
Everyone in Israel is on Absalom's side.
David's officials were in Jerusalem with him, and he told them,
Let's get out of here. We'll have to leave soon, or none of us will escape from Absalom. Hurry! If he moves fast, he could catch us while we're still here. Then he will kill us and everyone else in the city.
The officials said,
Your Majesty, we'll do whatever you say.
David left behind 10 of his wives to take care of the palace, but the rest of his family and his officials and soldiers went with him. They stopped at the last house at the edge of the city. Then David stood there and watched while his regular troops and his bodyguards marched past. The last group was the 600 soldiers who had followed him from Gath. Their commander was Ittai. David spoke to Ittai and said,
"You're a foreigner from the town of Gath. You don't have to leave with us. Go back and join the new king. You haven't been with me very long, so why should you have to follow me when I don't even know where I'm going? Take your soldiers and go back. I pray that the Lord will be kind and faithful to you."
Ittai answered,
"Your Majesty, just as surely as you and the Lord live, I will go where you go, no matter if it costs me my life."
"Then come on,"
David said. So Ittai and all his men and their families walked on past David. The people of Jerusalem were crying and moaning as David and everyone with him passed by. He led them across Kidron Valley and along the road toward the desert. Zadok and Abiathar, the priests, were there along with several men from the tribe of Levi who were carrying the sacred chest. They set the chest down and left it there until David and his followers had gone out of the city. Then David said,
"Zadok, take the sacred chest back to Jerusalem. If the Lord is pleased with me, he will bring me back and let me see it and his tent again. But if he says he isn't pleased with me, then let him do what he knows is best. Zadok, you are a good judge of things, so return to the city and don't cause any trouble. Take your son Ahimaaz with you. Abiathar and his son Jonathan will also go back. I'll wait at the river crossing in the desert until I hear from you."
Zadok and Abiathar took the sacred chest back into Jerusalem and stayed there. David went on up the slope of the Mount of Olives. He was barefoot and crying, and he covered his head to show his sorrow. Everyone with him was crying, and they covered their heads too. Someone told David,
"Ahithophel is helping Absalom plot against you."
David said,
"Please, Lord, keep Ahithophel's plans from working."
When David reached the top of the Mount of Olives, he met Hushai the Archite at a place of worship. Hushai's robe was torn, and dust was on his head. David told him,
"If you come with me, you might slow us down. Go back into the city and tell Absalom, 'Your Majesty, I am your servant. I will serve you now, just as I served your father in the past.' Hushai, if you do that, you can help me ruin Ahithophel's plans. Zadok and Abiathar the priests will be there with you, and you can tell them everything you hear in the palace. Then have them send their sons Ahimaaz and Jonathan to tell me what you've heard."
David's advisor Hushai slipped back into Jerusalem just about the same time that Absalom was coming in. 2 Samuel chapter 16. David had started down the other side of the Mount of Olives when he was met by Ziba, the chief servant of Mephibosheth. Ziba had 2 donkeys that were carrying 200 loaves of bread, 100 handfuls of raisins, 100 figs, and some wine.
"What's all this?"
David asked. Ziba said,
"The donkeys are for your family to ride, the bread and fruit are for the people to eat, and the wine is for them to drink in the desert when they're tired out."
"And where is Mephibosheth?"
David asked. Ziba answered,
"He stayed in Jerusalem because he thinks the people of Israel want him to rule the kingdom of his grandfather Saul."
David then told him,
"Everything that used to belong to Mephibosheth is now yours."
Ziba said,
"Your Majesty, I am your humble servant, and I hope you will be pleased with me."
David was near the town of Bahurim when a man came out and started cursing him. The man was Shimei, the son of Gera, and he was one of Saul's distant relatives. He threw stones at David and his soldiers, and at everyone else, including the bodyguards who walked on each side of David. Shimei was yelling at David,
"Get out of here, you murderer! You good for nothing! The Lord is paying you back for killing so many in Saul's family. You stole his kingdom, but now the Lord has given it to your son Absalom. You're a murderer, and that's why you're in such big trouble.
Abishai said,
Your Majesty, this man is as useless as a dead dog. He shouldn't be allowed to curse you. Let me go over and chop off his head.
David replied,
What will I ever do with you and your brother Joab? If Shimei is cursing me because the Lord has told him to, then who are you to tell him to stop?
Then David said to Abishai and all his soldiers,
My own son is trying to kill me. Why shouldn't this man from the tribe of Benjamin want me dead even more? Let him curse all he wants. Maybe the Lord did tell him to curse me. But if the Lord hears these curses and sees the trouble I'm in, maybe he will have pity on me instead.
David and the others went on down the road. Shimei went along the hillside by the road, cursing and throwing rocks and dirt at them. When David and those with him came to the Jordan River, they were tired out. But after they rested, they felt much better. By this time, Absalom, Ahithophel, and the others had reached Jerusalem. David's friend Hushai came to Absalom and said,
Long live the king! Long live the king!
But Absalom asked Hushai,
Is this how you show loyalty to your friend David? Why didn't you go with him?
Hushai answered,
The Lord and the people of Israel have chosen you to be king. I can't leave. I have to stay and serve the one they've chosen. Besides, it seems right for me to serve you, just as I served your father.
Absalom turned to Ahithophel and said,
Give us your advice. What should we do?
Ahithophel answered,
Some of your father's wives were left here to take care of the palace. You should have sex with them. Then everyone will find out that you have publicly disgraced your father. This will make you and your followers even more powerful.
Absalom had set up a tent on the flat roof of the palace, and everyone watched as he went into the tent with his father's wives. Ahithophel gave such good advice in those days that both Absalom and David thought it had come straight from God.